what is a perfect family? I had an image of what I thought a perfect family was. A husband and a wife with a few kids and a dog living in a nice house with a white picket fence. Well, I grew up with quite an imperfect family by those standards. I lived with my mom, who was divorced from my dad, my brother and sister who had a different dad. We had no white picket fence, and my mom never, ever let us get a dog. But what made things really imperfect was my stepdad. My mom remarried when I was very little, and the guy was just difficult. This happens sometimes in divorce. You have people who have a hard time finding the right way to navigate between the families that existed before the divorce and the families that are created post-divorce. My stepdad certainly made things very uncomfortable for all of us. His insecurities led him to do things like not letting my dad step foot into the home or call my house line. He didn't let my dad attend my birthday parties, and he tore up any picture both my parents were in. Despite the divorce and my mom's new marriage, my dad still loved me and wanted to have a special relationship with me. But he had another obstacle that got in his way. My dad's career had him traveling 80% of the time, so we didn't get much time to spend together. As it was, I could only see him every other weekend, and sometimes he wasn't even in town on the weekends I was supposed to be with him. So what did he do? He made a promise that he could keep. My dad promised to send me postcards from everywhere in the world he went. Now, this came at a time before Skype or Zoom or cell phones existed. So my dad used the tools he had to constantly remind me that he loved me, that he missed me, and that he was thinking of me. I now have hundreds of postcards from all over the world telling me that my dad will always be with me. Thanks to my mom, I even have the very first postcard my dad sent me, which, believe it or not, was when I was 5 days old. Obviously, I was too little to save it for myself, so she did me the favor of hiding it in an album for me. At some point, though, I stopped receiving the postcards. We soon realized that it was my stepdad who had been throwing them away. What do you do in a situation like that? Well, my dad and I focused on which was within our control. My dad started sending me more postcards at a time in hopes that I'd get one, and I began racing to the mailbox every day after school to grab the mail before my stepdad did. Oh, and the other thing we did? We used humor to cope. That's why my dad sent me a postcard with my stepdad's picture on it. Yeah, that's the thing about imperfect family dynamics. Sometimes you just have to make the best out of a difficult situation. There was one day in particular I remember vividly. My mom and I had spent the entire day organizing my bedroom closet. At the end of the day, I felt so accomplished and proud. That night, my dad called me to see how I was doing, just like he called me every night. Now, I've already told you that my stepdad didn't let my dad call my house line, but what I didn't tell you is that my mom actually bought me a phone and my own private line so that my dad could call me without any restrictions. "Hi, mi amor, how was your day?" he said. At first, I was so excited to tell him about my day, but then I remembered the rules and I got sad. "What's wrong, mi amor?" "I just wish you could see how organized my closet is, Dad." My dad sighed and said, "Well, I wish I could see it too, but you could still tell me about it." And so I did, and after a few minutes, we hung up. I brushed my teeth, jumped in the shower, got ready for bed, got into my PJs, and soon forgot all about my dad's and the closet. Suddenly, I hear a knock on the window. It freaked me out. I stood on my bed and I peered through the blinds just to see who was out there. All of a sudden, I see my dad's giant smile and his big hands waving at me. I crack open the window and I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Just because I can't come in doesn't mean I can't see the closet. Show me." So I jumped out of bed and like Vanna White, I showed him how organized my closet was. My dad taught me that day that he would always show up for me, no matter what. As for my mom was juggling between work, a blended family, and a very difficult husband. But looking back now, I realize all the sacrifices that she made. Like, for example, she never ever spoke negatively about my dad, even though he had hurt her. Luckily for all of us, my mom did end up divorcing my stepdad. But I am very grateful for having him in my life. Because of what I went through, I learned how to deal with difficult situations and people. I learned what divorce could look like and what it doesn't have to look like. That's the beauty of imperfection. It's in the imperfections that we see what really matters. Even though I came from what someone would consider a broken home, my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, we were always bonded by love and our commitment to one another. I used to think that a family was a husband and a wife and a couple of kids with a white picket fence. But what I've realized is that all a perfect family is a bunch of imperfect people who are willing to love each other through and through.